By the 13th century, so the 1200s, as we've just discussed, the dream of a lasting Crusader kingdom in the Holy Lands was starting to fade. 1291, it was over. But in the early part of the 13th century, in the early 1200s, the writing was already on the wall. The best of the Crusades had already come and gone. And so Pope Innocent III turned the zeal of the Crusaders against fellow Christians. In 1209, Innocent III launched not just an attack, not a battle, not even a war. He launched a crusade against the Cathars in southern France, the Languedoc region of southern France. If you look at a map, the Rhone River kind of goes right through the center of it, hence that clip art that I referred to earlier. So let's start with who were the Cathars? Who were the guys that are on fire here? And this is Montségur Castle in the background. So the Cathars were a group of Gnostics. And Gnosticism had pretty much disappeared by the end of the 3rd century, certainly by the end of the 4th. But then, like whack-a-mole, it had popped up again in the 12th century in southern France. And these people were referred to by various things, including the Albis, and that was because, or Albigensians, because a lot of the Cathar activity was centered around the French town of Albi in southern France. Sometimes they're referred to as the Cathars. So these were nominally Christians, but they were really practicing Gnostics. So they believed that Christ was a spirit, not a flesh and blood human being. So if Christ was just a spirit, then what event could not have occurred?
Death and resurrection.
Death and resurrection of Christ. They believed that there were two equal gods in the universe, a good God and a bad God, et cetera, et cetera. Not to go into all the characteristics of Gnosticism, again, which we've already covered in this course. But from a practical standpoint, by 1209, southern France was no longer Christian. I mean, even the noblemen had all converted to Catharism. The bishops that had been put there by the Catholic Church, most of them eventually converted to Catharism. So southern France really had fallen beyond the pale of the Roman Catholic Church. They even started creating their own priests. Now, how happy do you think the Vatican is when nominal Catholics start consecrating their own priests outside of the Catholic Church? It was not a happy thing. These priests were known as perfecti. And to become a perfecti, you had to renounce worldly things, you had to live a pure life from that point on, and then you could become a priest of the Catholic. And the person who's in charge of this crusade is Simon de Montfort. And Simon de Montfort leads an army of battle-hardened crusaders who had been fighting the Muslims in the Holy Lands. Now think about that a moment. These are guys who had fought against people like Saladin, and now they're unleashed on unarmed civilians in southern France. Think about the impact of that. That's like landing the 75th Infantry in Ackworth and just telling them to go out and shoot everybody.
Let God sort them out.
Yeah, let God sort it out. Now on Ackworth and Kennesaw, there might
Kennesaw would defend
be more of a resistance. I understand. But there was no law in southern France in the 13th century requiring that all heads of households own a handgun. There was no law. Like in 1209, this is known to history as the Albigensian Crusade, and this is so significant I probably would have put it on the list of the top 25 by itself. But the reason it's as high as 12 is because this crusade lasted for the better part of 2 decades. They wiped out most of the Cathars, but when they were finally done and the crusade was officially over, the Pope scratched his head and said, there's still a few Cathars out there. I know. Who'll start the Inquisition? And that's what they did. They started the Inquisition. So that's why this is all the way up there at 12. because there's more to this than just the Albigensian Crusade. It was named Albigensian Crusade because the French city of Albi was a Catholic stronghold. Lasted for 20 years. They fought against these people in southern France. 20 years.
They must have put up some kind of resistance.
While authorized by the Pope, the actual fighting was carried out by secular forces, mostly under Simon de Montfort. There probably has not been a level of ferocity in dealing with one's own flock in the history of the world as what was carried out here. Oh, here's the one that that Lynette commented on the web. Ooh, so I'll let you do it here. Ooh, thank you. This is Albigensian worshippers on the banks of the Rhone, which runs right through southern France. July 22nd, 1209, so this is at the beginning of the Crusades. City of Béziers is sacked. 20,000 men, women, and children are killed by the Crusaders. There was a papal representative there named Arnaud. He was asked if Catholics should be spared during the assault, because here Simon de Montfort was actually trying to be a nice guy. And he goes to the papal representative and he says, wait a second, if we take over the city, how do I know who are good card-carrying baptized Catholics and who are the heretics? You have to give me guidance on what to do here. And the response from the papal representative was, kill them all, for God will know his own. And that is exactly what the Crusader army did. They wiped out 20,000 men, women, and children. Wholesale burnings of Cathars were carried out during the Crusade. This is not the first time that heretics had been burned in the history of the Christian Church, but this began wholesale burnings of people.
What do you mean by wholesale burning? Wholesale?
In mass.
En masse. 1211, 400 are burned after the fall of La Veuve. So this is a mass burning. This isn't one at a time. They take all of them out and build a big, huge pyre, and they set them all on fire while they're still alive. Also in 1211, 94 are burnt after the fall of Crusade.
Wouldn't they garrote them if they denounced Catharism?
That happened later. That happened once the Inquisition started. If you would denounce whatever the heresy you'd been convicted of, they would choke you to death before they set you on fire. And that was considered a mercy.
That's just
Pope Gregory IX instituted the Papal Inquisition over a 4-year period. This is one of those things I investigated for like 2 weeks and could never get a firm date. On July 2nd, you know, I could never find it. So over this 4-year period, Gregory IX institutes the Papal Inquisition. Why did the Inquisition happen originally? It was to wipe out the remnants of the Cathars, because by this time we're getting to the end of the Albigensian Crusade. It's been very successful, but there still are a few Cathar strongholds around, and the Pope has to have a mechanism to deal with them, and he starts the Inquisition. 1239, 103 are burned in Montélimar, and in 1244, although it wasn't the most Cathars that were burned, it's the most famous incident. 215 Cathars were burned at the castle of Montségur, and in this case they were Cathar priests. So this really was the final stronghold, is Montségur Castle. And the siege goes on for several days. The Cathars figure out they can't possibly win, so they surrender. They are captured by the Crusader or the Inquisition. Each one of them is given the opportunity to recant of their heresy. And in this case, they were told, if you recant of your heresy, you will not be burned. That's a pretty big incentive. All 215 Cathar priests refused to recant, and they were all burned in a huge conflagration in front of Montségur Castle. And this is sometimes known as the Massacre of Montségur.